Yeah, the link remained the same, incidentally. Yeah. I thought it will generate a new format of the link, but it generated the same link. Yeah, so there is no confusion now. Please confirm that now everybody is able to see.
Sir.
All right, great, thank you. Yes, so we were talking about this misalignment. I think those who could now join from YouTube, they haven't missed much actually. We have just started this session, and what so far I have covered is that essentially the first concept that we have to implement in OBE is avoiding the misalignment between the questions, outcome, and the instructions. Instruction in the sense the 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 way you teach in the classroom, the aids, teaching aids that you use, or the content that you use to teach, or your the delivery mechanism of teaching in the classroom. This whole process is instruction designing. So what you plan to teach in the classroom in your sessions, and what is being what is expected outcome that you want to achieve, and what questions are being asked in the examinations, or in the questions that you ask in the classroom generally while teaching. Everything comes as a part of the questions. So these questions should be aligned with the outcomes that you are trying to achieve, and outcomes should be aligned with the instructions designing used by you to deliver your sessions in the classroom. So that is the alignment that is expected. This is the first foundational block of implementing outcomes-based education. That's what we started with, and now we are taking using an example to explain this concept further. So we're first of all talking about what the outcome that you wanted to achieve, which was applying analytical skills. And actually in the assignment that you are planning to conduct, uh, the questions are actually only targeting the factual recall. So something that is there in the memory, they are supposed to just recall that and write as an answer, and that's it. But what actually, so this is a misalignment. And what will happen here is that you will see that many students actually could score good marks. So this is a false positive, because what you were expecting them to achieve is applying the analytical skills. Questions was just factual recall, and hence many students could probably answer that question because it's an easy question, and you will have a false positive. You'll have a huge attainment percentage there, but it is not the right kind of output that you were expecting to see. So this, using such data for planning the remedial actions, is not going to be useful for you to plan, achieve the performance improvement in the students' academics. And hence the problems that you see, that students are not able to get the desired employment, somewhere lies here actually. So that is something that outcomes-based education is going to help you to put everything in the right perspective and right place. And the data that you collect and analyze is going to help you to take the right decisions at the right time. So to achieve that, the first concept is to understand is how to avoid the misalignment between the outcomes, instructions, and the assessments. The second example is how the misalignment between instruction and the question happens. So instruction strategies focus entirely on summarizing the arguments of different authors. So you as a teacher wanted to teach how to summarize the arguments of different authors, but the question actually measures the student's ability to compare and critique the arguments of the different authors. So what you taught and expecting the students to achieve is being able to summarize something. But the questions is actually at the higher level, compare and critique, which is actually analysis level question. Critiquing is actually kind of evaluate level question. And what is being actually taught in the classroom is a summarization. So maybe apply level, the instructions are being planned, but the the exam is really tough. So here in this case, you will have false negatives because many students will not be able to answer that question. So naturally, again, this misalignment will give you wrong attainment data, which cannot be used for you to, if you are planning some kind of remedial actions here, it is not the remedial action to be planned on the students. It is supposed to be planned for the course designing and the questions designing, not on the students' performance. So again, so this is something that is to be considered in while implementing the outcomes-based learning. The first concept is avoiding the misalignment between the instructions, outcomes, and the assessments. So how to avoid misalignment of instructions, outcomes, and assessment? Are there any techniques? Are there any frameworks? That is something that we are going to learn in this session. So we are going to now create a pathway to course outcomes and the questions designing here onwards in this session, to section to follow in this session. What I'm going to cover here is I'm going to introduce you to a course blueprint and map the content of the course to knowledge dimensions. So what is a course blueprint? It is actually a model that we are going to design in which you will be able to create a hierarchical structure of your content, identify the knowledge dimensions associated with this content. Then there is a big question to address here after that. Once you identify the knowledge dimension, is what is the desired level of cognition? And this desired level of cognition is essentially is a very important part of your course blueprint designing. And in fact, it is also the second concept that we are going to learn in our session. And that is also one of the most important and fundamental concept in implementing the OBE correctly. So this is something that is going to take a significant amount of time in our session today. That is to identify the desired cognitive levels. And then you decide the assessment strategy to assess whether the learning has reached the desired level of cognition. And the fourth concept that we will discuss here in other topic that we will discuss is designing the course outcomes based on the course blueprint. So this course blueprint you can use for two purposes. One is designing the questions and the second is designing the course outcomes. So this is the framework that you will require to avoid the misalignment between your instructions designing, outcomes, and the assessments. So if you could create this blueprint, you will be able to start moving towards the direction of avoiding the misalignment as much as possible in your course. And that will definitely benefit the students and the overall organization when it comes to achieving the course outcomes, implementing OBE correctly, and helping the students become more employable. So let's first of all learn. I'm pretty sure that many of you have already read about it, about the knowledge dimensions, and have a good understanding of what these four knowledge dimensions are. However, just for the sake of loading this into our active memory, I'm going to kind of quickly cover this the description of what these four knowledge dimensions are. So the first knowledge dimension is factual knowledge dimension. What it means, it basically is about the discrete, isolated content elements, terminologies, knowledge of specific details and the elements. So these are all dots here and there. But we know what that dot is, right? So, and then when you start learning something new, we come across with many such kind of pieces, concepts, some discrete isolated content elements, some terminologies, right? So we start recognizing things, but when we start connecting these discrete isolated dots, we start forming the concept, and what it comes out with, some kind of classification, some categories, principles, generalization, theories, models, structures of the concepts, right? That picture starts emerging in front of us. The model that I'm going to show you, if you just see that what this model is, and if you start relating how to avoid misalignment, between the instructions, outcomes, and the assessments by using this model, that will form a concept. But when you start using it for the actual use in day-to-day life, then it will become your procedural knowledge, to know how to use it, when to use it, why to use it, what kind of benefits it gives you. So creating this kind of, having a deeper understanding of how to use this model becomes your procedural knowledge. But until that point in time, it will remain your conceptual knowledge. So it obviously, the procedural knowledge include the skills, algorithms, techniques, and methods, as well as knowledge of the criteria used to determine and justify when to do what with the specific domains and the principles. And the last one is very interesting area, and one of the most ignored area is metacognitive, and ignored area in the higher education. But this is not the problem of only our country, but all over the world. There is a growing recognition of this missing dimension of the knowledge, metacognitive knowledge, and a lot of emphasis has been given to this knowledge dimension. In the recent past, many education researchers are starting doing a good research on this area, and they have published a lot of papers also. There is a lot of discussion happening around how to improve the the knowledge of the students in this area of metacognition. And certain universities have started taking very serious steps towards making sure that students' ability in the areas of becoming a lifelong learner, becoming a strategic thinker, becoming a being able to think critically. They are emphasizing the metacognitive knowledge dimension. We are going to discuss more about metacognition, up some time. But this is what conceptually I wanted to say. So this is your kind of factual knowledge, some discrete isolated elements. When you start connecting these dots, it forms the concept. And when you are able to know how to reach from one point to the other point, right, it gives you it requires you to have procedural knowledge. So it requires procedural knowledge to be able to go from point A to point B. So this is how conceptually you can kind of relate these things, three knowledge dimensions. Now when it comes to the metacognitive knowledge, as I mentioned to you, a lot of emphasis is now being given to this knowledge dimension, which is generally ignored. But it is for the 21st century learners, the kind of it is expected that in 10 to 15 years time from now, the world will move towards innovation age. And this innovation age, this is not something that is my hypothesis, but many futurists from the education field or from the corporate, they are talking about this now. And there are quite a few good articles that you will find on the internet. Please go through that. And it is expected that within 10 to 15 years, we will be into an era called innovation age. So those who born around 5 to 10 years ago, right, will be in the higher education from 5 to 10 years from now. So they will have a completely different mindset. As you know, right, they are exposed to the technology, and their attention, the span of attention is very low. And in fact, it is with us also right now. Quite a few of us must be checking WhatsApp or some emails side by side. Multitasking always happens. And you can imagine that this must be already visible in your classrooms also, right? Students also are doing the same thing because they're carrying the smartphones in the classroom. So their attention span is going to be extremely low. In the future, it is further going to be difficult. So those who are going to be in the field of teaching, in the field of education, for next 10 to 20, 15 to 20 years, they are going to face this challenge. Definitely. Those who are going to retire in next 5 years, for them, this problem is not going to be really big. But definitely those who are going to teach beyond that, they will face this problem definitely. And I will urge you to keep, watch on this, all this development that is happening, and how it is going to be challenging for the teachers to kind of face that kind of expectation from these students who are going to be totally different than today's generation. So these students, who are going to then work in the innovation age from 10 to 15 years from now, they require a good command over four C's, that is communication, creativity, critical thinking, and also an ability to basically very, very creative, kind of innovative in their all the actions. So rather, I would say, along with the communication, the collaboration is also important. So communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity are the four C's that are important, likely to be important. And the fifth, the dimension, are the skill that is required is becoming lifelong learners. And to become the lifelong learner, the most fundamental property that a human being requires is knowing what we don't know. If you know what we don't know, then only then there would be some motivation to learn, that is something that is missing and something that is required to be learned. And that only that kind of process of self-evaluation, self-criticism is going to help them become a better learner or become a lifelong learner. So anything that we teach over a period of 4 years, what is said is that 40% of that knowledge that we deliver to them become obsolete, because the rate at which the new information is getting generated, new fields of work are emerging, is phenomenon, and that speed is extremely high. The amount of data, knowledge is getting generated at huge, at a huge speed, and hence it is going to be really impossible for us to prepare the student for some of the kind of problems that they are going to face, which don't exist today. So if you know what problem exists today, probably you will be able to prepare them for that. But we don't know what problems they are going to face in the future. So how can you prepare them for that, to solve those problems? That is a fundamental problem. And hence it is important for them to make, we have to, it's recognize this need. And based on that, the metacognition related dimensions of the knowledge are going to be extremely important for us to prepare the students for the challenges that they're going to face in innovation era. So that is the concept here. And hence, if you look at what this metacognition knowledge dimension is, I've given you certain inputs here using some kind of research papers that I have come across with. So this is not my original knowledge. I'm just sharing with you because this is kind of allowed to be shared with Creative Commons license. So here there are two parts of the metacognition. It is, one is knowledge of the cognition, that is about how individuals know about their own cognition, or about the cognition in general. It is usually, it includes three different kinds of metacognitive awareness: declarative, procedural, and conditional knowledge. So declarative knowledge refers to knowing about the things. So something, and then procedural is about how to do the things, and the conditional knowledge is why and when the aspect, when to use it. So it's basically, you will find that it is mixing with the other three knowledge dimensions. The factual knowledge is nothing but, it's kind of declarative knowledge. Procedural knowledge is about how to do the things, and conditional knowledge is basically why and when it is to be used. So procedural knowledge probably ends at how to do the things, right? But metacognition is higher than that, and it tells them why something should be done in a particular manner. On, if you know 10 different ways of doing things, then which one is useful when. That is the kind of decision they are able to take, and that is metacognition. Is above everything, and that drives their abilities to do the good job every day in implementing something. So that is, so other aspect, other way of looking at metacognition is that it is there everywhere, right? We have to just recognize that properly and tell them that this is something different. This is about the strategic thinking. and prepare them. We have to tell them, in the sense, to students. We have to prepare the students such a way that they should be able to recognize that this is procedural knowledge and this is metacognitive knowledge. This requires strategic thinking and this requires procedural knowledge. Uh, right. So this kind of distinction we have to help them to do, so that they become the critical thinkers in the future. This so separately, we are not going to conduct a separate course for becoming a critical thinker, or we are not going to create a separate course for help them understand how to collaborate, how to communicate. Probably communication skill is a separate course, but essentially, instead of wasting time in teaching communication skill, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity separately in separate 4 courses, it is better to implement those ideas in the regular curriculum and cover those 4 C's anyway, while teaching your regular courses. And that is the idea that is being developed here. So while teaching the metacognitive, this is what something that exactly what I wanted to say. So according to the metacognitive theories, metacognition includes 2 domains: knowledge of the cognition and regulation of the cognition. So what is knowledge of the cognition that we have just seen? It includes the knowledge about oneself as a learner, knowledge about the learning strategies, and knowledge about why and when to use the given strategy. And regulation of the knowledge includes ability to plan, monitor, regulate, and evaluate your learning process, that is students' learning process. Instructors can incorporate strategies to help the students develop their self-regulatory skills, and they can use the strategies that guide students to think metacognitively about the course content. That is to think like a professional, approach problem as a professional in the discipline world. So that is something that is expected to happen in the regulation of the cognition. So how we have to help them recognize how they are learning. Can this learning process be different, right? So some of the strategies that to foster the self-regulation skills. So how you can help your student to foster the self-regulation skills of the cognition is suggested here as. So encourage them, for the goal setting. Prompt students to consider why they are taking your course, what grade they want to earn, and how they can plan to achieve those goals. For example, have the students work in the groups to brainstorm strategies for learning, something your course. So let's say you tell them that this is a topic in your course is, they require little more efforts. This is you require some good strategy to learn this concept very well, and then let them think about how they will plan to learn that. And so that is about creating the ability to collaborate, communicate, and critical thinking about how to learn something. So that is about the regulation of their learning. So the second suggestion is that build in ways for the students to stop and take the stock during the class. During the class, ask the student to pause for a couple of minutes and think about what they are doing at the moment. That is, are you taking the notes, engaging in off-task activities, or working on another course? What is happening right now? After the pause, this could be a good time for the students to ask the question. So, in between. So this is something that has to be implemented as a part of your instruction design. You think about when you should take the pause, ask this kind of questions to the students, and then encourage them to ask the question. What is going to happen here is that there are certain steps through which you take the students from the basic level to advanced level of metacognition. So the basic level is responding to what you are teaching them, right? So their response means questions coming from the students, right? If they are well receiving your messages, naturally they will be encouraged to ask the question. But we have to actually allow these processes to be properly implemented, and these are the kind of ways the education researchers are now suggesting to the teachers that they can think about it. Or it could be an exam wrapper. So before the actual exam is being given, there is another layer on top of that. That's the wrapper I'm talking about. So ask the students to these kind of three questions. How did you prepare for the exam? Giving the students a number of options to choose. For example, I read over my notes a few times. I completed practice questions. I created a concept map. Might help those who aren't aware of the strategies other than the ones they use. So once you're either, before your exam or after your exam, right? These are the kind of questions that you can ask about the exam. What did you do differently? Which questions did you find difficult to answer? What kinds of errors did you make on the exam? Encourage students to look for the patterns. That is, on a multiple choice test, did they find application questions more difficult to answer than the factual questions? Then what will you do differently to prepare for the next exam? Ask the students to plan how they will use this information as they prepare for the next test. Point out the importance of using prior experience to plan the future ones. So these are the kind of ways in which those metacognitive skills are being developed in the students. There is no need of any separate course. This should be part of the regular teaching and learning process of any course. So that was about the 4 knowledge dimensions. This is very important conceptual building block for implementing the outcomes-based education. Clear understanding of what these 4 knowledge dimensions are. And we are going to use that in our course blueprint model development. So that's why I took a little more time to make sure that we are all on the same page. We have got some understanding of collectively right now, may not be as expected, but still we have collectively, we have a good understanding of what these 4 knowledge dimensions are now. And let us now think about, each one of you can think about your own course that you teach in this semester, and think about what units are there covered in your syllabus, and open one unit box and start thinking about the subtopics that you cover in that unit. So there may be 6 units in your course. Pick any one of the units, open it, and start visualizing the subtopics that you cover, and start relating these subtopics with the knowledge dimensions. It's very easy exercise. And on the right side, I have also given you the description of the knowledge dimensions, and you can use this description to clearly map these subtopics of your units. Now, it's not easy to really create kind of carve out a piece from your subtopic and say that this is conceptual, this is procedural, this is factual, and this is kind of strategic, metacognitive. That may not be possible easily, but there could be some mistakes there, or some limitations, not mistakes, some limitations in being able to identify those knowledge dimensions related to subtopics. But still, we will end up doing a good job, right? So that is the idea here. So let's say that you came out with this kind of knowledge dimensions practically, and these are the kind of examples here I can show you. Let me go back. On the right side, you can see that introduction to database and characteristics of database, which is a factual knowledge. Introduction to data models, conceptual knowledge, right? Hierarchical model. Procedural database design process, relational algebra operations from the set theory are all procedural knowledge examples. Understanding of how to deal with the deadlocks. When they have to deal with the deadlocks is metacognitive knowledge. So something that is inherently related with metacognitive that you can easily identify, but generally you can create the opportunities for the students to go to the level of little more in the understanding the strategy behind solving the problems, and that is to help them to develop their metacognitive skills. And that is something that is required for them as of to become critical thinker. Essentially, one of the 4 C's requires that. So your syllabus subtopics, once you start identifying the knowledge dimensions, it may look like something like this. and you are going to distribute your subtopics here and there in this chart, and it may look like this at the end, right? So I've just taken three units here and distributed the subtopics in this chart. Now let me transpose this chart in this manner, but the idea is same here. I require some area on my right side, so that's the reason I have arranged this chart in this manner. So because these are the three units, subtopics, and these subtopics are related to these knowledge dimension, right? So this is the way you can do it. This is an example taken from a professor who started using this model. You can easily now relate the knowledge dimensions here. This is another example, psychoanalytical perspectives, Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory, conceptual, anxiety and defense mechanism, factual and conceptual, critique, procedural, metacognitive. These are the knowledge dimensions. This is somebody has started using it and that person shared it with me. I'm showing you here as one of the practical implementation of this concept. So any questions now? Before we move on? I hope that YouTube is working fine now, right? Chat box doesn't have any questions as yet. Anybody wants to talk? Feel free to ask the questions. Okay, I'm going ahead now. We are on the path to design the COs and the questions, right? So now the next step is to identify the...
Dear fellow participants, the resource person is now soliciting questions from you. If you have any clarifications at this point, you may get it clarified from the resource person.
We are on the path. All right. So actually, let me go ahead and come back to the questions a little later. So the next step in developing our course blueprint model is identifying the category of cognitive processes. Now, this is very, very important step in our course blueprint model designing, and very important step in avoiding the misalignment between the instructions, outcomes, and assessments. So we have to always, work towards making sure that the misalignment is as minimal as possible. And hence this concept of identifying the desired cognitive level is very, very important. It's basically fulcrum. It's a pivot. There could be imbalance if we do not identify this desired level of cognition correctly. It will get imbalanced easily at any point. So far we discussed about the knowledge dimensions, which is everything was related to the teaching process. But the other side of the teaching process is the student, and they are going to learn the knowledge that we are going to deliver to them. And this knowledge, the regulation of this knowledge is going to happen through these 6 steps. That is, remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. This is called as cognitive process of any human beings. It is applicable, right? Benjamin Bloom and his team invented these 6 steps. Defined these 6 steps, and that is why it is called and famously known as Bloom's taxonomy. But essentially what Bloom's taxonomy is, it is the cognitive process of learning and it is associated with the students learning process of the students, and then we have to align these two processes, the teaching and the learning, uh, as a part of our course blueprint modeling. So what we are doing here is that now we are trying to understand what is the desired level of cognition, how to identify that, who will tell this to us. I will definitely say that this is not the responsibility of a teacher who is supposed to make sure that the classroom teaching is done, the assessments are designed, the practicals, labs, or any workshops or outside the classroom activities are covered. That is the primary responsibility of the teacher. But this is the responsibility of somebody who is kind of more strategic thinker, responsible for designing the program, and has given a special responsibility to implement outcomes based education. They are supposed to think about it. But when it is designed, and obviously it's not possible for one person to do this, so it may be collectively done by a team of senior faculty members in each department. So let's say there is a group of senior faculty members, and they are the domain experts also of their courses, and they are now thinking about what should be the desired level of cognition in each course for each topic. And that is something that they have to come out with as an instruction, as a rubric, and given it to the program designer to use it in designing the whole OBE framework. So that is a process that is expected to have here. But from the teacher's perspective, it is important to know what this is all about, because they have to plan their instructions accordingly. If they don't know what is the desired level of cognition, then we have seen the example of misalignment. The teacher ended teaching something that is related just to summarizing, and the somebody who is designing the questions has asked the question which was required, critiquing the author's views, which was never taught. So somebody who's designing the question is using the rubric, but somebody who's teaching the content doesn't know what the rubric is, and then teaching it the way that teacher thinks is the right way to do. And that is the exact reason for misalignment. So we have to avoid that misalignment. So this is that group's responsibility to come out with desired level of cognitions for each subtopic and give it to the program designer, and the program designer has to then use it for designing the complete program designing. So that is a process. So here the teacher has to understand why they have to know this, so that the instructions designing can be done according to the desired level of cognition. So this is the cognition process, and this is the teaching process that we have learned. There are 4 dimensions of knowledge, and then there is a cognition process of 6 steps. You must be already familiar with the Bloom's taxonomy or the cognitive process. Exhibit the memory of previously learned material is remembering. Demonstrate the understanding of the facts and ideas by organizing and comparing dash 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 is the understanding. Solving the problem to a new situation, right? It is basically application level knowledge. Analysis required. Even when we expect the student to be at analysis level, the student should be able to examine, break the information into parts by identifying the motives or the causes. To be at evaluate level means present and defend opinions by making judgments about information, validity of ideas. So we saw that the critiquing comes here, evaluation, and the teaching was summarizing something which was at the maybe level of understand, apply, and the creating is basically compiling the information together in a different way by combining the elements in a new pattern, or proposing the alternative solutions altogether which never existed. So a new alternative solution is provided by the student. It means that the student has reached create level. It is not always necessary to be doing PhD level research to be at create level. You can easily bring any idea to a create level. A simple idea of which never existed in the past is also create level knowledge. So even if you are teaching factual knowledge, you can easily take the students to the create level also if it is desired. And that is where desired level of cognition is expected to be defined properly. So when we are teaching in the classroom, we ask questions, right? Certain questions are being asked so that we know whether we are going in the right direction. Are the students understanding? Are the students reaching up to the desired level of cognition? If I want the student to be able to apply something, I will give them a problem to solve, because I expect them to now use the solution which I have taught to them to solve some problem, and I will design an assignment accordingly. So the whole purpose always of asking the question is never to pass or fail the student, actually, right? It is always to see whether the students have reached the desired level of cognition. We interpret it in terms of marks for some other important academic decisions, rather qualify or disqualify the student to, because it's a formal structure of our education process, and that is inherent part of the whole, the idea of higher education. And there are some certain rules and regulations which require us to convert these experiences of the students into marks, and interpret those into marks and then tell them the result right now. But unfortunately, the whole orientation is towards that, and not inclined towards unearthing the issues in the learning process and the teaching process, and use it for the continuous improvement. And that is where the outcomes based education comes in picture. So if we were if we were teaching factual knowledge, so as a teacher, who tells me that you are supposed to take them to the level of, let's say, understand? And who tells me, if I am teaching conceptual knowledge, who tells me that whether I should take them to the apply level, evaluate them at to be at apply level or at analyze level? So somebody has to tell me as a teacher, and this somebody has to be the program designer. And program designer has to use the help of a team working with together to design this whole course blueprint, in which it is clearly written that the desired level of cognition for these subtopics is this. And hence, when you design the questions or ask the questions in the classroom, it should be to evaluate whether the students have reached that level. When you design your instructions, you should design the instructions such a way that they understand the concept, and they are at the level of apply or analysis or remember, whatever, right? So that's the way this desired level of cognition is very important concept in the overall outcomes based education. Uh, in ancient Indian philosophers also have given many such inputs. Now, one of the shlok that you will find is, it means that श्रवण करने की इच्छा, प्रात्यक्ष में श्रवण करना, ग्रहण करना, स्मरण में रखना, तर्क वितर्क, सिद्धाय निश्चय, सिद्धांत निश्चय, अर्थ ज्ञान तथा बुद्धत्व ज्ञान, ये बुद्धि के 8 अंग है. Okay, today's modern world thinks that there are 6 levels of cognition, but Indian philosophers have already done a good research on this, and they say that there are 8 such steps. That's fine, but just for the information. Coming back to our 6 steps of cognition, what is important to know here is that remember is one of the most important steps in the cognition, because it is representation of retention of the knowledge. If the knowledge retention is poor, the transfer of the knowledge will always be a problem. All other steps in the cognition are called as transfer of the knowledge. So if remembering is weak, everything else will be weak. So there is a lot of discussion about lower order, higher order, and but in the lower order, in my opinion, remember is the most important step. And hence, we should always ask questions to help students recall the knowledge again and again. So a lot of homework or surprise class tests or whatever that you call as, right, which are in not very formal ones. It's not associated with any term work or marks or something like that. All these kind of practice tests that we give help the students to recall the knowledge. And we should have more and more frequently kind of conducted such kind of tests, MCQs, or kind of, which helps typically them to recall the knowledge, are the kind of questions we should always have in our question bank. And we should just keep giving them those questions so that their retention of the knowledge becomes very, kind of firm. And then immediately you will see that the transfer of the knowledge is improving, and automatically you will see that the performance in all other steps involved in the cognition is improving. So you don't have to really burden them with complex problems in their homework, right? Just make sure that their knowledge retention is happening correctly. That is good enough, actually, in my opinion, in the homework or informal kind of tests. Do you agree with me? Yeah, you can say agree, disagree. You can criticize me. There is no problem. All right. So thank you for those responses. So here, now this, so that's actually, so what we were discussing so far, that you identify your subtopics, relate those with the knowledge dimensions, and then try to identify what is the desired level of cognition. So there is no, so you have to find some kind of, logic behind identifying the desired level of cognition. So you think about the first year courses. If you want the student to directly go to the level of apply, analyze in the first year courses, then in my opinion, you are expecting too much. Maybe some of the 2 years post-graduation program, you want the student right from the beginning to be at apply, analyze level, because you want them to go to the create level by the time they finish their post-graduation, because already they have covered the, the remember, understand, apply, analysis in their previous studies, and you want them to quickly go on to the above levels on top of that. So there it is different. But for let's say undergraduate program, you don't want to really burden the student for each and every subtopic to be at apply level of analysis level. You may have some sprinkle of topics to be at apply level or analysis level in the first year of year, but progressively, obviously, you want them more and more concepts, subtopics to be at procedural level, so that you want them to at apply, analysis, and evaluate level, right? Most of the topics out of, let's say, 100 topics, you want 50 topics to be at apply level, 25 topics to be at analysis, and 25 at maybe, at evaluate and create level. But this distribution could be lower in your first couple of semester or 3 semesters, right? So that's the overall expectation that you can have as an overall guideline for your program designing. And then based on that, you can set this desired level of cognitions. So for many topics, you don't want student to be at, let's say, apply level, but you want them at to remember level or understand level. So accordingly, this chart, some kind of guideline can be created by you as a first step. Then use that guideline to identify, associate that with the subtopics in each course. And that is how it is going to help you actually to create less, not unnecessary. Students should not be burdened. They should enjoy the education process, as well as progressively you want them to go to the advanced level. And this progression should be logically designed by looking at each subtopic and the desired level of cognition. So when I will now going to slightly go to the one more complex area of these ideas of ideas of cognitive domain, procedural domain, and or psychomotor domain, I will say, not procedure, psychomotor domain. And the third domain is uh, affective domain. So these are the three domains of learning. Usually you will come across as a reference. And we have to know now what is the relationship of all these three learning domains. We have talked a lot about cognitive domain. We talked a little bit about the psychomotor domain. And we also talked a lot about the affective domain while we were discussing the metacognitive knowledge dimension. So my uh, argument to you is that in what we are introduced so far in our, if you look at the uh, accreditation manuals or some other guidelines or policy documents that you open, you will see that there is a reference to Bloom's taxonomy, cognitive process generally. So people are familiar with these terms, but you have to also remember that there is a hidden dimension here, somewhere here, and these hidden dimensions related to psychomotor domain, which also has kind of some steps involved in it, which start at imitation, manipulation, precision, articulation, and naturalization. These are called as degrees of competence in performing a skill. So learning from initial exposure to the mastery. So when we say, right, basically if you wake him up from the sleep, that person will be able to tell you how to do the things, right? That's the kind of mastery one can achieve. And we use that as a kind of giving metaphor as a example for when we talk about the mastery. So when you design your practicals or labs, your assessments for the students to be able to reach these levels, you have to also think about what kind of assessments are you designing. Are they just following what you are showing them, or are they able to follow the procedure given to them, and then they are supposed to just follow the steps, or you are not giving them any document now, they are supposed to just show you how to achieve certain results, so by recalling what they had learned in the earlier steps. So that is precision. So this problem could be the process could be implemented to a newer situation and not the same situation in that case, right? So they should be able to apply that in a newer kind of newer set of conditions that you are exposing them to. So that is kind of taking them to the precision level. Articulation, naturalization, further next levels of the competence. But what is the level at which you are designing your assessment, and is that expected as per your this course blueprint is something that has to be recognized by you as a teacher. And then this is also part of your desired cognitive level. Apply, but is it precision or apply to only manipulation? Is it analysis to manipulation or analysis to precision? So these are also kind of hidden dimensions there that you have to recognize and plan your teaching and measuring the outcomes accordingly. Now, as I mentioned to you, affective domain is all over there. You cannot separate that out, but you have to start recognizing that very carefully and plan certain activities, certain inputs, certain instructions, and certain assessments such a way that the affective domain related skills are also developed in the students, which are going to be extremely important in the to prepare the students for 21st century challenges. So you will find a huge resources on the internet. Easily you can find such charts which are there which can help you understand what is the psychomotor domain and what is expected here from the teacher. For example, if you want, let's say, what is imitation? This copy action of another. So watch the teacher or the trainer and repeat the action process or activities. Action was copy, follow, replicate, repeat, adhere, observe, identify, mimic, try, reenact, or imitate. So this is what is expected competence here. Let's go to precision. Execute skill reliably, independent of help. Perform a task or activity with expertise and to high quality without assistance or instructions, able to demonstrate an activity to other learners. So demonstrate, complete, show, perfect, calibrate, control, practice. These are the action verbs. Now you can find similar action verbs in these Bloom's taxonomy related action verb also, but the deeper meaning is little different. So demonstrate here and demonstrate there could mean different. So the context has to be understood while you are designing your activities. So this is something that when the original research was done by Benjamin Bloom, Anderson, Cathol, and others in that team, they had not designed the psychomotor domain taxonomy. So this taxonomy, which is in I'm showing right now, wasn't the part of the original research by Bloom's taxonomy. They had done cognitive domain and the affective domain, but they had not done the psychomotor domain, which was added later by many education researchers like Dr. Dave, and then the kind of these three taxonomies became a complete kind of research on education theory. So here is another depiction of the same thing. Some other references also, you will find that there are, instead of 5, this person is saying that there are 4 levels. And so a lot of research, that you can access easily available on the internet, and try to know deeper about what these levels of competencies are. And as far as the metacognitive knowledge dimension is concerned, or affective domain is concerned, receiving, responding, valuing, organizing, internalizing are the steps involved in this. So what is receiving? It is open to experience an idea or willing to hear. This willingness to hear itself is the first step. Responding is get involved into or participate actively. So, we have to encourage, just like I'm encouraging you to ask the questions. If you ask that question to me, it means that you're responding. Right now, maybe you're receiving it. You're willing to hear right now what I'm saying. Our participants will go to the responding stage when you start asking me the questions. Otherwise, we're still at the receiving level of metacognitive knowledge. That is what it is, actually, right? So what is to be done in the classroom differently, so that we take the students to upper levels of the metacognitive knowledge dimension. So behavior, for example, this for valuing, what is behavior here? Attach the values and express the personal opinions. In organizing, reconcile the disparate elements or conflicts and develop value system. Last one is the internalizing, is adopt belief system or philosophy. So you don't try to tell them that what to do. They know what is the rule of the organization and they behave accordingly. You don't try to deviate or break the rules or try to be unnecessary, over smart or over, expressive. They know, what the rules of the organization are, or the education institutes are, and they behave accordingly. So that is the internalizing. So this is a value system that gets developed over a period of time, but you don't require a separate course for that. You can add as a part of your curriculum design these things, and expect these kind of changes in the student skills over a period of time. So again, you will find a lot of research that is happening there, and you will be able to learn more deeper about these concepts yourself later on. So coming back to our idea, central idea of how to expect the students to go from lower to higher order of their skills. There are three. These are the four knowledge dimensions: factual, conceptual, procedural, metacognitive. And we were discussing earlier that we can expect the student to be able to describe, define, identify, explain, and then progressively we take them to compose, combine, assess, and critique. Right, we're taking them to higher order thinking skills. In procedural also, copy, follow, procedure, build, show, control, integrate, solve, design, and manage. We are taking them from lower to higher order of competence. And in metacognitive, attend, take part in, respond or react, debate or justify, organize, adhere, internalize, influence. These are the higher to lower order of behavioral patterns. But we say that metacognitive knowledge has to be sprinkled all over. It can't be separately taken into account. You can mix it with your procedural and your declarative and your procedural knowledge, right? So you can mix it here. Your conditional knowledge can be mixed here, and it can be part of your factual, conceptual, procedural level expectations, knowledge level expectations of the cognitive levels, and come out with these two guidelines only, and use these guidelines in your course blueprint to identify what is the desired level of cognition. If your course is in the 4th semester or 5th semester, naturally out of 100 subtopics, at least more and more subtopics should you want the students to be at. Let's say apply, analyze. If your course is in the 7th or 8th semester, even more topics should be at apply, analysis, and evaluate and create level. So this distribution of the topics to higher order thinking skills can be done accordingly, and that is how you can actually expect you can actually design the expected level of cognition there for every course blueprint. I think there is some comment there. Okay, so this is a comment. Let me read out. In the program we are offering, which is I'm pretty sure that all of you can see this, right? Professor Abdul Kalam has asked this question. In the program we are offering, there will be many courses, each course having different level of learning from the remember to create. When we concentrate the bottom of the pyramid of the Bloom's taxonomy in the beginning of the program, how the design is possible, could you explain? So this is exactly what I'm trying to come out with, an idea of you have to actually use this kind of rubric. This is the rubric, and you are saying that if your course is in the 1st semester, maybe you'll be focusing on your expected desired level of cognition to reach these levels. And progressively, if your course is somewhere in the 3rd, 4th year, you will be expecting them to be here, and later on here. So this is your expectation. You want the students to take from lower to order thinking skills. So these are the keywords related to your remember, understand, and then also procedural is not only remember the cognitive skills. There is a different dimension which we saw, is a hidden one that also has to be considered. Whether you want the student to be at imitate, or manipulate, or the precision level of their procedural knowledge, where you want them to go to. That is something that you have to think about. So that's the kind of rubric that you have to come out with, which you believe is the logical one. And you can try and test it, because over a period of time, you'll be able to fine tune it. I'm pretty sure that nobody will be able to do it completely correctly right from the, at the first attempt only. So that is where the data collection using the OBE is important. Analysis is important, so that it starts giving you this kind of feedback, input about where the alignment is required. And accordingly, you can adjust and align your programs using this data that you would collect using the outcomes-based education concepts. And that is the purpose for which OBE implementation becomes very important and is critical and very central to the idea of improving the quality of education, because it gives you a lot of input. One more comment I'm going to read out by Professor Aswil Ahmad. Thanks for the benchmarking. Our assumption is that outcomes-based education works better than conventional education, but do we have any evidence? Opinion, please. Exactly what I am showing you, that these are the kind of ways you can use OBE. Right now, the understanding of OBE is very shallow, and it is typically tried with accreditation process. Criteria 2 requires this, that's it. Implement it, write a document about how you are implementing the OBE, how you are computing the assessment, the attainment, submit it, you will get 10 points. If you are looking at OBE from this perspective, it will never improve the quality of education. But if you are implementing OBE with the concept of eliminating the misalignment between the instructions, outcomes, and assessments, it will definitely help you in improving the quality of education. And you can obviously, this is not my hypothesis. There's a tons of documents on internet you can access to and get inputs from the people, educators from all over the world. And there are email IDs given by them. Please to interact with them, ask these questions. I'm pretty sure that there will be many people who will tell you that what kind of improvements they could achieve. There are criticizers also. They don't believe that OBE is the right way of doing things. There are many fields of education. They will say that no, OBE doesn't apply here. If you, let's say you are a teacher of fine arts, you are teaching dancing to the students, dance, or let's say singing or instrumentation, not instrument playing. So how will you say that, how can I measure the outcomes here? How to design the outcomes? So when you start thinking like this, you should apply the same logic to, the person who once must have thought, how do I measure the current in amperes? How do I measure the temperature in degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit? If you look at the way they have derived this formulae, they have actually used only common sense. But today we are using this formula to define something. That today's temperature is 9 degrees centigrade in Pune. You have to believe that, right? Because we believe that that's the right way of measuring the temperature. So there has to be some way to design the course outcomes even for the fine arts. I'm pretty sure. So that's my response to you, sir. There is a question by Dr. Muthuraman. How can we assess the affective domain, or how can we plan the methods to assess? It's an important question. Let me answer that question to you. Next question is Srinidhi, Dr. Srinidhi, how to distinguish cognitive levels for UGPG in research programs? Okay, I'll take these two questions. I hope that we have to cover little more things here. But that's fine. Actually, we started at around 10, 20, 25 after the YouTube problem got over. So probably we might have to extend this little bit. Will that be fine? Around 15 to 20 minutes extension beyond 12 p.m. is fine. Organizers, please let me know. Because these two questions are very important also, and then I will also cover a lot of remaining part of this session. So 15 to 20 minutes extension is okay or not? Right. So actually, yeah. So remaining part of this session.
Okay, sir.
So question, let me address the first question. Dr. Muthuraman, how can we assess the affective domain? So actually, there is no need of, assessing the affective domain level skills by using the conventional method of assessment. So what is happening is the moment we think about assessment, we think about marks, right? So what is happening in the West is that they don't, many times, in fact, they don't give any marks to any assessment which is related to these kind of activities. These kind of, in the sense, the activities which are designed to build the metacognitive skills. Let's say there is a group discussion that you have planned to develop the communication skills in the students. And I will show you how the metacognitive knowledge dimension also comes in picture here. So you're as a teacher, you're observing these 4 or 5 students who are coming together to discuss on a topic. And usually you can find that a couple of students are kind of very aggressive and then trying to control the whole discussion themselves. They're not allowing others to talk. Couple of them will try to talk whenever they will find small window of apology, they will try to say something. And couple of them will never be able to talk. They will wonder when to talk, what to talk. Do I know, then there will be fear of talking in English. All sorts of issues will be there. So what is, are you going to fail the students who could not talk? No. But this thought comes in our mind because we are thinking about assessment from in the traditional manner, and we're always relating it to how many marks out of 10, how many marks I should give to the students who did not talk at all. So that is not the objective of the assessments which are related to the metacognitive skill. You can just say what you have achieved actually is that you have achieved very important thing here by conducting such assessment, and this self-realization has happened for those 2 students who could not talk at all, and that is the achievement of your assessment. And that's all you wanted to achieve, to tell those who could not talk that they could not talk. And then when you have your mentoring sessions, right, you can tell them how to overcome that fear. And that is the purpose of your activity, to identify who is not able to talk and then isolate them and then have a mentoring session with them about how to overcome that fear, what is required. And that is the way to build the communication skills. But what metacognition happened here? The student self-realized that they could not talk. That is the success of that activity. That's my response to you, sir. Professor Muthuraman. And Dr. Srinithi's question is how to distinguish cognitive levels for UG and PG and research programs. It's actually very straightforward answer to your question. Your UG, you may want to start at, let's say, very basic steps, right? But your PG, you will immediately start with essentially the at apply level, because already they have achieved a lot of basic level of knowledge they have gained in the UG programs. So you want them to start doing some kind of an analysis level, evaluate and create level work in the PG programs. So you will have cognitive levels at that level. Then in the research, the students of the PhD students have to define their own outcomes first of all. That is a part of their research actually, right? One of the fundamental step in research process is that you have to define what research you want to, what kind of problems you are going to solve and what outcomes you are going to achieve. That is a part of the definition of the uh, research project itself. So they have to come out with their own outcomes, and that is the highest level of metacognition. And obviously, that requires critical thinking, that requires collaboration with others to make sure that there are wrong assumptions are not made. It's not biased opinion that they're forming. Are they trying to solve the real problem, and are these the desired outcomes? So to validate that, they have to collaborate with others, communicate with others. They have to think critically. If they receive the feedback from others, they have to think critically and implement that. So this is the way the research students will come out with their own, the framework of what they want to achieve and what could be the outcomes of my research. So it's a totally different ball game when it comes to research. Professor Muthuraman further says, how can we record classroom interactions while teaching as marks? Because we have exam pattern. Yeah, so actually, you will continue to have that usually, obviously. As I mentioned to you, there are some other critical academic decisions dependent on marks. Those are driven by regulations. Those are driven by the various other things related to student progression. So obviously that has to continue as usual. But these marks, the questions being asked in the assessment have to be outcomes driven. And that is what we are talking about. What happens after the exam is over and using the exam for the academic decision is one part of the process, and using the data for outcomes analysis is other part of the process. And we are focused on the outcomes part of the process right now. Okay, so let me go ahead. Now, we are still at identifying the desired level of cognition. We talked about some kind of logical way of thinking and identifying, creating a rubric of how to distribute the topics and expect the students to be at desired cognition levels. Progressively, we want to have more and more topics to be at higher level of cognition. So now, if you look at the remember level of cognition, this is called as category. First of all, category is remember. Then there are cognitive processes such as recognizing or recalling within the category of remember. And each cognitive process has some action verbs like this: identify, recognize, or locate, retrieve. And then there are assessment formats. So when you want the student to be in the category of remember, you want the student to recognize something, you can ask these kind of questions. If you want the student to recall something, you can ask the questions using these action verbs, and this question could be of this nature, right? You can provide some hints and then ask your questions. So that's the kind of questions you can design using these keywords if you want the students to recall. So if I would go back to my course blueprint model, I wanted the student to be at remember level when I was teaching this factual related subtopics. So some of these subtopics which were related to factual knowledge, I want the student to be at remember level. Then I want the student to recall it. So I'm using the cognitive process of recall. And then I will use some of these, the action verbs here to complete my, this course blueprint model. So I want these action verbs to be used here to assess whether students are able to recall and whether they recall this knowledge which I am going to deliver in this part of my instruction delivery. Factual knowledge I am going to deliver. I want students to recall that, and for that I will design a question which will begin at define. This is an example, simplest example. But you may have to use multiple keywords, obviously, because this topic could be big enough for you to ask multiple questions. You may say that I want them to also recognize and also recall, right? In that case, you can have multiple cognitive processes and multiple action verbs also. And that is the further, obviously, what I am showing you here is a very simple representation of the idea of the course blueprint. Obviously, this can be very complex also. And you can have multiple processes here. If you believe that you are this factual, you want to take it to the let's say understand level, there could be some factual knowledges, subtopics which you want the student to be at understand level. So you naturally remember level is covered. When you are the student is, if student is reaching at understand level, remember is already covered. So you will have both cognitive processes, the remember cognitive processes plus the understand cognitive process. Understand has multiple cognitive processes, interpreting, exemplifying, so that a huge number of cognitive processes, and obviously there are corresponding action verbs and corresponding examples of what could be the types of questions you can ask. So this is the way to build your model and use this input for your course blueprint to build it progressively like this. So here in these cases, you wanted, for example, this factual knowledge to reach up to the understand level. Not always, it is not necessarily always factual means remember. You can always take factual to any level, but that is the desired level of cognition. That is when our rubric that we defined earlier to progressively take the students from lower to higher order thinking skill is that comes in picture. So this is only one course, right? So if there could be 30-40 courses in the program, so naturally there could be 40 those many course blueprints, each belonging to one course, right? That's how it should be done. So we have done now completely all the subtopics which were related to understand. Now, like, so this is a kind of a real life example of somebody who did it and used it in their courses. Apply is the next level. So wherever apply is the desired level of cognition, you can use the related cognitive processes and identify what action verbs you want to have there. So this is the course blueprint model. The program designing team has to come out. This is not the teacher's job to design it. Teacher's job is to use it for their day-to-day teaching, instruction designing, asking the questions. Is their responsibility to do it correctly then. But they can obviously participate. They can give the feedback to the team which is responsible for designing this. So this response is part of your OBE implementation. Response by the teacher about this model itself, whether it is incomplete, whether fine-tuning is required, whether certain misalignment is happening there. So how to further fine-tune it so that misalignment is as minimum as possible. That's the feedback the teachers can give to the system. And accordingly, this blueprint can be improved. So version number 2 can come in the future for the next batch. So that is how the course blueprint model is designed, right? Any questions here so far? Although we are not using the evaluate and create here in this model, I'm just going to, I showed you that there are certain steps available there as well. So now we are here with our course blueprint model. This is a real life example of how somebody has done it. This is another example of how somebody has actually used it after they attended my program. If you have any questions, let me know at this point in time. So there's one question not related directly to the topic we are discussing, but this is generic question. Are there any predetermined barriers in the OBE? Predetermined barriers, I did not get your question really well, but basically there are quite a few misconceptions about OBE, and there is a misconception that OBE is related to compliance with accreditation, and that's it. That's the biggest misconception, and that is the reason behind poor implementation of OBE, because people think that it is just a tick mark process that has to be just implemented somehow, and that's it, and collect the data. Somebody will analyze it. Somebody will find out why this data is collected. Nobody knows, and some document is submitted, and some 10 points are graded, are achieved there because we have created nice looking, beautiful, document which has to be uploaded in the DBV, and we will get 10 marks. If that was a limited approach of implement OBE, naturally you will lose the fun and joy in implementing OBE, and then you will never see the real benefits of implementing OBE. Right. So now we will go to the next concept. Right. Here it is a course outcomes designing concept that we will talk, because we have completed the blueprint designing now. I'm going to show you how this course blueprint now will going to help you in designing the course outcomes. So what is required in course outcome? You require action. Action verb, which we have already identified. Where is it? The action verb is already identified by us, which is here. So the first component of the course outcome we have already achieved. What is the second component? Second component is knowledge. Subject content. Represent the specific knowledge from any one or more of the 4 knowledge categories: factual, conceptual, procedural, metacognitive. We have already done that. Specific knowledge from one or many topics, right? So we have already done that. We have already achieved this. We have identified these subtopics which are related to this knowledge dimension. So first part of the course outcome statement is identified. Second part of the course outcome statement is also identified by us. So first 2 are done. What is the next one? Next one is condition of the performance. It means that it should represent the process the learner is expected to follow, or the conditions under which to perform the action. So this is actually, whenever you have your knowledge dimension as procedural, you must have your course outcome statement must have the condition and the process to follow by the student. So that is to clearly define what is expected from the students here. When they learn this subtopic, what is the level of desired level of cognition is defined by us, which is the condition of the performance, right? They should be able to do that. So this is to be taken into account while designing the course outcome statement. And the fourth part of the course outcome is criteria. So they have followed the process. They have the results are the results are achieved by them, or the outcomes are achieved by them from this process that they followed. And now you want them to compare that, let's say, with some other international standard, or between the groups of the students. Group 1 achieved something, group 2 achieved something. You want to compare and critique the achievements of the 2 groups. If that is a criteria of their achievements, then you can also define that in your course outcome statement. From where is this coming? Again, this is coming from desired level of cognition. So last 2 components come from the desired level of cognitions, and first 2 are already defined by us as action and the knowledge part of the content that you are going to cover. So your course blueprint model, which you define, automatically gives you this course outcome statements, because a lot of work is already done by you. So the parts which we don't know require now, I'm going to eliminate that, and I'll take these 2 columns together at the left side, and I'll add knowledge, criteria, and condition, these 3 columns, to define the course outcome statements. Right. So this is how you can design it very easily, and give a good name to the subtopics, and then use this chart to define your course outcome. So this is a raw design of the course outcome. If you further kind of rough the edges, these rough edges are removed, polished, you can create a nice, beautiful statement out of this, and it becomes the course outcome statement. So the misconceptions, like, that the course, there should be 5 to 6 course outcome statements. I don't know from where this misconception has occurred. It has never written anywhere that this should be the number of course outcome statements. This is something that has emerged in India, and everybody is following that. There could be 10, 15, 20 course outcome statements. As granular as possible, you should go and design the course outcome statements. So you can have 10 course outcomes, 15 course outcomes, 20 course outcomes, depending upon how beautifully you design your course blueprint model. It all depends on that. And each action verb actually can result into a course outcome statement. But if you have, let's say, a group of action verbs you have identified in your model here, in this model, let's say there are 10 different action verbs are related to, let's say, these procedural knowledge. You have, let's say, 10 different action verbs here. It's possible. What you can do is you take the highest one in the category of, within that category of the action verbs, which is the highest level of cognition, this cognitive process that you can take into account and use that as the input to your course outcome designing. Probably that will help you to optimize your course outcomes designing properly. But you can study, research more, and find out your own ways of doing it, designing it. So these are the very nicely designed course outcome statements I came across with. Describe general taxonomic rules on animal classification. The moment now you look at a statement like this, you will be able to identify the 4 components. Action, describe. Knowledge, general taxonomic rules on animal classification. So something like this, or classify Protista to phylum using examples of parasitic adaptation, or this could be the other example of very nicely designed course outcome statements. So when you distribute these course outcome statements on a scale of remember to create and factual to metacognitive, you will have a kind of distribution of these course outcome statements in this manner. Easily you can identify that. So in the courses that you will teach in the later part of the graduation process or for the PG, you will have more course outcomes statements here and in this direction, right? So you'll move this down and you will have more, this clustering will be more towards this side on the advanced level courses. Initial courses will have clustering here. Later on, the clustering has to have more inclination towards here, this side, right? That's how the distribution of the question course outcomes could be. Any questions so far? So now we come to we design the course outcomes. Now the last part is designing the questions now. So what is required to design the questions? There are 3 components. Outcomes based assessment required the specification of measurable and observable outcomes, which we have designed. Right? The assessments may measure one or more outcomes at a time. Use the knowledge dimensions, cognitive, psychomotor, and affective domain categories to decide what is the desired level of cognition, which we have done. And the third level is a clear plan of each course level. At each course level may be needed to decide which outcome should be assessed during internal assessment and which should go to summative. Some kind of strategy is required, and that is something the teacher will have to then create. Generally, what is said is that if you are implementing outcome-based assessments, it should be continuously done. Greater emphasis on the assessment is important in implementing the OBE. OBE means outcomes-based assessments. We have to constantly look at how to avoid the misalignment. You should delegate more responsibility to the teachers. They should autonomous in the way the assessments happen. There is no need of each and every assessment to go through the rigor of the examination department's process. There could be many assessment the teacher should be able to take anytime for the purpose of getting the feedback about the desired level of cognition. And these marks are private to the teachers. Not marks, these observations are private to the teachers. Teacher may not want to share it with others in the process because teacher has used it only for the purpose of getting some feedback about whether the students have achieved the desired level of cognition. So that's why the autonomy is required, and it should be comprehensive in nature. So to get that comprehensive in place, you have to have a very good question banks in place, which has got rich the variation of the questions related to various topics, units, concepts, outcomes, cognitive levels, and complexity levels. types of questions, subjective, objective. It should be a very good, nice question bank that you should have to make your assessment more comprehensive. When a teacher start thinking about his or her course, there are three important questions the teacher has to ask herself or himself. What do I want the students to know when they leave this course? So that is pointing to the learning outcomes. What kinds of activities in and out of a class will reinforce my learning outcomes and prepare the students for assessments? So that is about instructional strategies. And the assessments, what kinds of tasks will reveal whether the students have achieved the learning outcomes I have identified. So these are the kind of questions the student teacher should ask and prepare the course plan accordingly. So once again, if you come back to the idea of progression in their expectation from the student, from that is about the desired level of cognition. That is the input number one that goes into questions designing. The second input goes into our question designing, this kind of rubric, which tells us that we have to have a proper balance and distribution of expectations of the desired cognitions. And if you look at the program designing, these are the courses, these are the semesters, and these are the POs to be achieved by this program. And these POs are distributed into knowledge, skill, and attitude categories. And hence, these are the courses which are fulfilling the requirement of these program outcomes. That's why these courses are designed here. So the earlier courses are more in factual, conceptual knowledge, less procedural. Progressively, you have more procedural. Progressively, have more and more metacognitive, very complex metacognitive level knowledge. Also, you will start, applying by designing the activities like some kind of tech fest. You want the students to participate, present papers, or take the participation competitions, or organize some kind of events like blood donation. So that's how actually the metacognitive skills will be more kind of evident, and more students will be able to participate in that. So it's outside of the classroom kind of activities. It could be internships also, or project-based teaching you will add. So there's a collaboration, communication, critical thinking will also come in picture. So more and more procedural, declarative knowledge, the procedural knowledge and conditional knowledge will be imparted to them in the later part of the teaching. And that should reflect in the way the questions are also being designed by us, because there has to be a complete alignment between the instruction design, expected level of cognition, and that is the course outcomes, and the questions being designed. So if you put these two dimensions together, remember and factual, there could be 24 such combinations, right? And based on that, you can actually easily design your questions. Using the course blueprint, you can find out what is the combination. Let's say there is a combination of understand and procedural. Then automatically the assessments can be, or the questions can be designed. For example, clarify a sequence to be followed. You can easily come out with the combination. Using this combination, what kind of questions you should design. Create and procedural. Design and optimize process. Naturally, they have to come out with a new process, which is much more optimized than what is taught to them, is the expectation at create and procedural level. So you are teaching procedural knowledge, and if you want the student to be at create level, you can design the questions accordingly, or the activity accordingly. So this kind of course blueprint model will help you to keep your questions and assessments completely in align with what is being taught in the classroom, and what is the desired level of cognition. So likewise, you can actually create the mechanical engineers. If you have any there right now, they will enjoy this. So this is a course outcome code. You can create a kind of course outcome blueprint like this. What program outcomes this course outcome is aligned with. What is the topic? subtopic, knowledge dimension, cognitive process, assessment method, learning domain, type of question. This also could be given to the teacher that if you are achieving these 10 course outcomes, then this is what the the method to achieve the attainment of this course outcome. Make sure that this is how it is implemented. So automatically the attainment of the CO1 will be achieved. Any questions so far? We are actually reaching to the end of our discussion here. And that's why actually, since it is, you have to collect a lot of data of outcomes using any technology is desired here. Using Excel sheet is also use of technology, because Excel sheet is also software, but it has got limitations, and hence much more sophisticated technology can be used for outcome-based education to eliminate the manual work of collecting the data, analyzing it. But that process could be completely automated, and the teacher can directly go and take a look at the attainment and take the remedial actions to improve the performance of the students. So that is basically the importance of using technology. You can build the question banks, and these question banks can be used for designing the question papers, which will have certain distribution of the questions related to the course outcomes. And you can then, this system can then generate the question papers accordingly, and each course will have the proper distribution of the questions according to the template design. So there will not be variation in the way the question papers are designed all over the institute. So these are some examples of how it is implemented, and how the question papers are automatically created using technology. So that's it from my end. Ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to ask your questions, if any.
Thank you very much, sir, for the wonderful presentation. It was indeed a brainstorming session, as one of our participants mentioned. Knowing others is wisdom, and knowing yourself is enlightenment, says Lao Tzu. I would like to thank you again, sir, for making us realize the place we are in this wholesome process of framing course outcomes and outcome-based questions. You have thrown light on a new field of taxonomy and a new set of action verbs pertaining to the psychomotor domain. You have also emphasized on the essentiality of course blueprint and mapping of the course contents with knowledge dimensions. You have also emphasized on the essentiality of dividing units into subtopics, progressing to the grassroots level to realize higher order learning. You have also lucidly explained the parallel process and, of course, a complex process of incorporating the taxonomy at the affective, cognitive, and psychomotor levels. You wonderfully illustrated the need to apply all the cognitive levels possibly in a particular unit, which may be realized through dividing the units into subtopics, and that will subsequently lead to the proper distribution of course outcomes. Now the session is open for discussion. The participants are requested to ask any questions regarding the presentation.
If anybody wants to talk directly, I have allowed unmuting yourself, so please feel free to talk in case you have any questions. There is a question here, actually. I forgot to read that. Can you please give us a step-wise procedure to implement OBE from syllabus? Actually, I will share these. What we have covered today is outcomes designing and the question designing. And the whole OBE FDP that I conduct is actually 8 hours long FDP, which starts at program designing. So that would cover the whole spectrum of OBE implementation. Actually. So, actually, it's a good idea to create a flowchart or the mind map. Attempt it, creating it one in the future and share with all of you. All right, I think there are no more questions, sir. So I would like to then conclude the session. There are no more questions now.
Okay, sir. So now we are at the closing point of the presentation session, the webinar. I deem it my immense pleasure to propose vote of thanks. First of all, I would like to register my sincere gratitude to God Almighty for having chanced us to conduct this program. Next, I would like to extend my hearty thanks to the Managing Committee in general and our Secretary Al-Haj T.S. Fatur Rabbani in particular for remaining instrumental in the conduct of this webinar. Thank you, sirs. May I register my hearty gratitude to the resource person of this occasion, Mr. Ajay Bhagwat, Director of Encode India Private Limited, Pune, Maharashtra, for having enlightened us with the topic, the designing of course outcomes and the setting of outcome-focused questions. Thank you very much, sir. I also thank our respected principal, Dr. S.M. Abdul Kader, for remaining a great source of motivation in the conduct of this program. Thank you very much, sir. With the same gratitude, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the Vice Principal, Dr. S.M.A. Syed Mohammad Khaja, for his motivation. Thank you, sir. I also thank the Controller of Examination, Dr. Siti Jamila, and the Deputy Controller of Examination, Dr. Kanna Muttaya, for their active participation in this program. It's my duty to thank the Dean of Arts, Dr. S. Mohammad Hanif, and the Dean of Science, Dr. Mohammad Roshan, for having motivated us a lot to conduct this program. I also sincerely thank all the admin heads and the heads of the departments for their patient and active participation in this program. Last but not least, I extend my sincere thanks to all the participants, my dear fellow colleagues, for your active participation. Thank you, Anand.
All right, sir. Then let me say goodbye to all of you.